Welcome to this video on active listening. In this video, we'll explore what active listening means in the role of a facilitator, what challenges you might face, and how you can use active listening as a tool to help your group have better dialogue. Throughout the video, you will notice that I ask you to pause and complete activities or answer questions. Please follow along with these instructions as they will help you understand the material better. Before we get started with all that, why are we even discussing active listening? We all understand that listening is important, so why talk about it? Isn't it just something we do during a discussion? Take a moment to think about how you listen in daily life. Are you always actively listening? Are there times when you tune out? Times when you aren't really listening to what's being said? When? Most people find they're not really actively listening all the time, and there can be times when it's especially challenging. Since active listening is the foundation of many of the tools and techniques you'll use as a facilitator, it is essential that you're able to build that skill and know what to do when it can be difficult to listen. The core of effective facilitation is active and empathetic listening. By that we mean not only hearing and showing that you've heard all the words that were said, but also trying to understand the assumptions and feelings behind the words, and to track the full arc of the conversation. Ideally, it means listening without judgment, trying to understand what the person is saying and why they're saying it without thinking about whether you agree or disagree. Have you ever noticed how in unfacilitated group discussions, people tend to focus on what they have to say without really listening to each other? Ever notice how it can be frustrating when the conversation goes round in circles because people are not really responding to each other, but are simply having multiple monologues? Well, that's why a facilitator listening actively can really improve the quality of the conversation by adding that layer of listening. In dialogue, as perspectives and experiences are being shared, active listening helps the group feel heard and recognized. When a group feels you're really listening to what they have to say, they are more encouraged to share and feel that their contributions matter. If you're able to listen in this way, it creates an environment in which participants are able to fully express themselves. It also models active listening for the group, which will improve the dialogue overall and is important for building the safe space that you are trying to create for your group's dialogue process. Active listening also ensures that you're able to make the right interventions for your group and understand what they need to help them have better discussions. As a facilitator, you're not only listening to what's being said, but also what isn't being said, analyzing the conversation as you listen. Within a conversation, you listen for emotions or lack of them, and you need to be aware of the group dynamics. You also listen for subtle things, such as tone and word choice. When facilitating online, you're connecting with your group through your computer, and that itself can challenge your active listening. First, technical issues can make it difficult for you to hear someone's audio clearly. Second, it can be hard to maintain concentration when you're sitting in front of a computer screen for a long period of time. And finally, it can be tempting to engage with many things at once when we're on our computers: news, music, social media, and maybe even outside distractions. Work with technical support to make sure your equipment and connection are working well. It is critical that you ensure your tech as the facilitator is in working order before your session starts. Direct your participants to receive support from the in-room technical support person and use the chat box in the room as a place for people to help clarify what they said or to take notes for the group to help them keep up with the conversation if they aren't hearing the group well. Do not be afraid of asking for clarification. If you didn't hear it well, your group probably didn't either. As for being distracted or losing focus, self-awareness is key. Resist the temptation to open any other distractions on your screen that are not supporting your facilitation of the session. It is important as a facilitator to not only be aware of what's happening outside yourself, like technical issues, but also what's going on inside you that might be making it difficult for you to fully listen to your group. Notice when your mind wanders, and remind yourself to focus back on the conversation. Summarize what's being said in your head or in writing or by taking notes in the chat box. Encourage yourself to be curious. Try to hold on to a childlike wonder. What will happen next? And to remember that everyone in the group has the potential to teach you something. There are many factors within you that can be making it difficult for you to listen. It could be as simple as being hungry or tired, or you could be distracted or feeling overwhelmed by the conversation. Being aware or self-aware of how you're feeling as you facilitate is extremely important, as that impacts the way you facilitate. Practice taking moments to ask yourself to think about how your own feelings, thoughts, and comfort might be impacting your facilitation. Go ahead and try it out now. How focused are you on this video? Are you really listening well? One of the most important challenges that facilitators need to pay attention to and to learn how to navigate, because they're facilitating discussions that have the potential to cover sensitive topics, is listening and facilitating while triggered. Let's explore what that means and how self-awareness can help you to overcome this challenge. We all have things that we have strong emotional reactions to, things that are hard for us to listen to. It can be topics you have strong opinions about, or words that trigger a reaction for you. In dialogue about sensitive topics, it's highly likely from time to time someone will say something that you passionately disagree with, or makes you feel threatened in some way. When triggered as a facilitator by something shared in the group's dialogue, it can be hard to listen actively in an unbiased way to your group. When triggered, we often have a difficult time hearing what the other person is actually trying to say because we hear them through the lens of our own response. Your triggers and likes and dislikes potentially affect how you facilitate. They can affect your neutrality, or at least make you steer the group discussion to certain directions. This creates a space that is no longer safe. It's okay to have your own opinions and hotspots. Everyone does. But how can you make sure it doesn't impact your listening or your facilitation? Be self-aware. Part of being able to be self-reflective and self-aware as a facilitator is to think about what those things are that you'll have a hard time listening to, or would make it difficult for you to be an unbiased facilitator. Pause this video and take some time to make a list of words, topics, or opinions that could trigger an emotional reaction for you. What are you really passionate about? What topic makes you talk and talk when you're having coffee with friends? This way you won't be surprised in session. Know your triggers and know how they can affect your facilitation if you're not mindful about it. Okay, now you have a list of your triggers. Now what? Well, first, now you know what type of discussions you need to be extra careful in, and can watch out for any reactions you might have that could impact your facilitation and neutrality. Encourage yourself to be curious. Ask yourself why someone has a certain opinion, and constantly try to understand underlying assumptions and feelings. Be aware of the interventions you make, and make sure the questions you ask are unbiased and that you give space for all opinions. Sometimes writing down a question can give you that extra time to really assess the question. You can also use your co-facilitator for support and share the question with them for their opinion. Having good communication with your co-facilitator and discussing each other's triggers can help you both remain unbiased and listen well to your group. Now we know how to keep our own triggers and emotional reactions in check. What about dialogue participants? How can active listening tools help when it's your participants that are triggered? First, notice when your participants are triggered. Triggers are usually a sign that something important is being discussed, an issue the group really connects to, but it's also a sign that your group might be having issues listening to one another. They can be triggered by something they heard or by the topic in general. They also lose the ability to actively listen. And mostly what they focus on is what they're going to say next and ensuring they get their point across. Their listening skills pretty much go out the window. It's the same process that can happen to you as a facilitator when you're triggered, and some of the same techniques apply to your group. Help the group to be aware that there are strong emotions present, that they're triggered. This can be done by observing the dynamic to the group and drawing their attention to the emotions around the topic. It's important to emphasize that there should be space for everyone to share what's important for them and why it's important, and to have others hear. Encourage them to really carefully listen to what's being said by others, as active listening is hard when triggered. Also explain that making sense of the strong emotions in dialogue is only possible when you're actively trying to understand what's going on for the other person. As a facilitator, use talking in rounds and asking why questions to ensure this process. You can also have the group reflect on why is this issue so important for them? Why is it triggering an emotional response? Being triggered or having strong emotions in dialogue can be really transformative learning opportunities, so it's good for facilitators to know how to work with those moments. Finally, active listening as a facilitator involves listening to what's being said, but also being aware of what's not being said, or what views are not present in the room. In fact, a good question to ask your group sometimes is, has there been anything we haven't been able to express so far? That might give them an opportunity to be fully honest. You can also watch out for nonverbal communication, facial expressions, body language, for cues about genuine thoughts and feelings.